Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. With me, as always, is...
Marry me. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Today, we're talking about The Strangers, Chapter 1, which was released May 17th, 2024. It's been a minute since we've done a new release podcast, but... We've been making our way through the Strangers movies, so here we are now talking about this, and you, as you always do, because here's the thing, like when we get together, I don't know if Edward knows where my head is at, because I'm very transparent. Like I'll go on like Letterboxd, and Edward follows me on Letterboxd, so I'll like review a movie and put the score there, so he'll already have a vague idea of what I think, but he's like, everything has to be like shrouded in mystery for Edward. He's like, I'm not allowed to know anything, so he'll do this thing where he trolls me on Instagram and post a story of like I don't know if you have the poster of the movie or you have, or like you just take a photo of like when you go to see it in the theater and you just write the caption, "Wow." And it's like, what does that mean?
And you know how many people... I thought the people who follow me would have been hep to it by now, but then I got so many messages like, wow good or wow bad, and I just use it to advertise this podcast. So if you're watching now as a result of that, thank you. I appreciate it for you follow through. But also I don't do my Letterboxd review until many months after we've released a podcast on what we cover, because I don't want people unless I did it months and months before. I want to give people a chance if they're just finding the podcast and they're going back, revisiting, or not even revisiting, visiting some older episodes for the first time and everything like that. I'd rather not show my hand because I want to incentivize listeners. If I don't know how successful it is, but it makes me feel good.
What's this? Okay, sorry. What's the situation on your camera or Wi-Fi? So, because you're still a little like pixely.
Oh, the Wi-Fi is off of every other.
Oh,
device.
I'm it's okay. I just meant for the clarity. So you come in and out for people who are listening and aren't seeing this because you're still a little. It's been like the last month or so.
We need to switch. It's just been a really hectic time. I haven't had 2 days off consecutively to string together to pay attention to this particular technical aspect. It will be handled, folks. I have 2 consecutive days off at the end of this week. So after this, hopefully I'll have a new Wi-Fi provider and start making some leeway towards some other things.
This is a conversation that probably could have happened off the pod, but you're getting a little behind the scenes here. You've frozen completely, by the way, from that during that conversation. But I'm sure you'll come back. Yeah. But yeah, that's the cherry picker for you. You never know what you're gonna get. So for the sake of not leaving everyone in suspense, what is your Letterboxd score of The Strangers Chapter 1?
Boy, I would say probably 2 stars, maybe. Okay. What was yours? I can't remember.
So initially I said 2 stars. I put it up half. I think 2.5. Okay. I think 2.5. And my ranking, because if you're just joining us, if you haven't listened to Strangers and Strangers Prey at Night episodes, I don't like this franchise. I think it's bullshit. I think it's way overhyped. Like, the first movie was really nothing special. All these people just leaving the podcast right now.
I know. Listen to me. Go on, though.
But we found, that's the thing, a lot of people don't like The Strangers. They feel the same way as I do. So it is a very polarizing franchise, but it's funny because the people who really love it, I think that they're not really, realize that there's a lot of people that don't. So they kind of look at us and just be like, the fuck? What's wrong with you? But we got a lot of numbers, I'll tell you. But it's, I said my piece about the first movie. I like the second movie marginally better. I think that It was more interesting. It was more exciting, just in terms of like what it was doing, or like leaning into slasher. It's by no means like a masterpiece or something that I was just like, yes, this, like, this is a, like, that I gave 3 stars to. So it's just like they're all pretty much in the same ballpark. For this one, I think that there's like things that I vacillate back and forth on with the original, because I think that this is, for all intents and purposes, like a kind of a redux of the original, and we'll get into that. I found that the direction of the original was much better, just in terms of like where, like, just like the suspense, which I didn't think was handled all that well in the original, but like certain beats that they hit that they kind of replicated here, I think were done much more successfully in the original, like the whole thing with Glenn Howerton's character coming in versus like the scene that they kind of homaged here, which I thought was like a failure. But I think that this movie is so much more interesting to look at. Just based on like the coloring, the cinematography, even just like the environment that they move around in, like there's more to it. We're given more like equal time to like both characters of the couple, whereas like in the original, the boyfriend just kind of disappeared for a long time. So I liked that we were kind of with both of them and got to like see a little bit more. Like, they were fucking stupid people in this movie, and I want to get into that. But I don't know. I saw the movie. I was just kind of like, ho hum, like it's exactly what I expected it to be, if I'm being honest. And it's been interesting, kind of like seeing the reaction online, because people are like, this is the worst fucking movie of the year. And saying that like, oh, this is worse than Night Swim or things like that. I'm just like, is it, or did you just like have higher expectations than it should have been? Because I think that this movie, it's exactly on par for what I would expect. So my ranking would actually be Pray at Night, this, and then the original in last.
Really?
Yeah.
That's stunning. I obviously it's not mine. No.
With the note that, I mean, they're all pretty much like by a hair, like they're all on the same level, more or less.
See, that's not my experience, obviously, like when we talked about them before. Like, I'm much more, like column A, column B. I feel like I'm in full, I don't know, it puts me back in the mind of when I used to rent horror movies from the video store, like in the 2000s and before, about like it was always a gamble, and I'd usually want to rent multiple horror films, and I'd lead with the one I had the least faith in and land, with the one that I thought, okay, I'm probably going to enjoy this the most. And this one might have been shuffled somewhere in the middle of my screening, time. I don't think it would have been the one I had the highest expectations for or the lowest. I would have just wanted to coast through it. But I only say that because it makes me focus on what the strengths are and the negatives. And for me, I thought as a sit, this was the dullest sit. I literally, around the point that we get to one of the key moments of the franchise now, which is the Is Tamara home, I noticed my eyelids fluttering, and I was well rested. I was not. I was leaning into this movie. Like I said, I wasn't like gunning for it. Like, hey, come on, or look, let's do this piece of shit. I wasn't doing that. I was just like, okay, let's let this movie happen. There were some really, really good trailers that led into it, and then I saw that around that moment, I just noticed myself starting to kind of drift to sleep, and I was like, okay, this is a problem. But because it's something that I agree with you. I think the suspense as a whole was handled more effectively in actually both the previous films than in this one. There was something where I felt the hand of Rennie Harlan kind of ushering me through his funhouse of a movie, as if he's just kind of going like, "Ooh, wait, look at this, look what I did, look what I set up for you." And I was like, yeah, I see it. I know exactly what you're trying to do here. And either there's going to be somebody behind her, or there's going to be nobody behind her. but you're telegraphing exactly like, what the scare is, and you're either going to completely deliver on that or completely try to subvert my expectations. The problem is I've seen so many horror films, neither one of them will surprise me. I'll be like, you're either building to something or you're building to nothing, rather than catch me off guard, throw me a curveball, really subvert my expectations. That's the way it just kind of made me sad.
Yeah. No, and I completely understand, and I agree with that, because there's so much in here just like, what's the point? What's the point of it all? But still, I still think it's just like the thing that just sends it over a little bit for me is that there's more like they do more, like they go like, under the floorboards and stuff, like it just it might not have been like executed the best as it could be, but it was doing things differently. Whereas like that first movie, like sitting through that, it's just so grueling for me to just like, okay, all right, and then we're in the house for a while. And I remember there's one point where she's like sitting outside on the back porch and she goes running, and then all of a sudden she's like, makes her way to that shed, and then she's in there for like 10 minutes milling about. So I appreciated a little bit more that we were like checking in with like, okay, when they got separated, we're with the dude, we're with her. It's not good, but it's I guess that's going to be my biggest takeaway from that, is like, manage your expectations and you'll probably have a good enough time. But on that note, let's just do a little bit of our cherry picker housekeeping here. So if you are a fan of the podcast, if you've been listening for a while, or if you're brand new, you can support us over on Patreon under my name, Zack Cherry, ZackCherry. With that support at any tier, you get early access to all of our episodes, which usually comes out about 3 or 4 days before our typical Tuesday releases. If you're also supporting on the Freddy Krueger tier, you'll get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is our bonus Patreon exclusive episode that we do once a month. We just did Mommy Dearest. This month it's going to be Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, another cult classic, horror adjacent, fun ride. So yeah, if you want to help with the podcast, if you want to like give us more money so we can like fix this Wi-Fi situation, that would be greatly appreciated.
You can make a difference.
You can make a difference. This is where the funding goes to fix little issues like this. But I do want to thank our supporters. So at the Michael Myers tier, thank you to Kyle Beard, Sam Levy, Khalil Young, Brady James, Ali Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Bruce the Genetic, Jackhammer Rando, Gary Blasick, Sean Flanagan, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, Brandy Beebe, and then our Ghostface supporters, Eric Champney, Daniel Saturn, Tamika Jones, and Garrison Nichols. Thank you very much to all of y'all and all the supporters that come over to the Patreon, especially if you're here from the Cherry Picker. We greatly appreciate it. We do this all for free, so it's a great way to contribute a little. And I also want to thank our new editor, Jason Voorhees Gallotello, who's now taking over from Boy Cried Wolf. So thank you to him as well. Edward, anything else I missed, you think?
Just a premise, I guess.
All right, let's hear the premise of chapter 1.
All right. After their car breaks down in an eerie small town, a young couple is forced to spend the night in a remote cabin. Panic ensues as they are terrorized with no mercy and seemingly no motive by The Strangers, Chapter 1. I didn't even try.
Oh, don't be so self-deprecating. It was good.
I literally didn't try.
This might be the biggest question. This is a good starting off point. Is this A prequel. Is this a remake? Is it a sequel? Is it a reimagining? Because the marketing has said so many different things. Yeah. It's not very clear in the movie what's going on. All we know is that this is the first part of a trilogy. Trilogy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Watch our Scream 3 pod if you didn't get that. While I was watching it, I can honestly say it felt like, and this is probably why it's the lowest on my ranking as far as the franchise so far, it didn't feel like, as far as tone or threat, or even, and I'm sorry to say this, but I mean, even within kind of like the filmmaking success, did they succeed in like making like a scary film? No, I didn't feel the threat at all from the characters. In fact, for the longest time, they all seemed to be just milling about. And the thing is, that first movie, what a huge component that did work for me, even in the promotional materials, as I alluded to in that pod, was just the standing across the street watching, like, I don't want that ever in my life. Mm-hmm. And everything that they did, every time the strangers of this particular chapter would move into the frame, I either wanted to roll my eyes, cross my arms, or laugh. So I hope it's a complete remake trilogy, or maybe they just get better. That's what sort of was the thing. Yeah. Well,
okay. So I mean, I don't see how it could be a sequel, because it's like they were killed at the end of the... Right. I mean, well, horror movie rules, like, are they really dead? Right. But I mean, it seemed they were... The whole point of the Strangers movies was to show, like, these are real people. They're humans. And, like, we saw their faces, at least the blonde doll face when she, had the shotgun at her. So I would imagine, like, they are dead, and this is, like, is it a prequel? But I mean, like, the thing is, like, they had up-to-date technology like iPhones and stuff. So, I mean, I guess it's a remake. Honestly, I don't care. I'm curious. I want to know what other people think. In terms of, like, the look of the Strangers, like, I thought it was a bit of a downgrade, because
oh my God.
I hated the fact that both Dollface and Pinup Girl were wearing beanies, as you stateside people call it. Like, we say toque up here in Canada, right. Us Canucks and our toques. And it made them very, like, it was hard to distinguish the two female strangers because of that. Because I mean, like, at least before you had, like, the blonde hair, like, the masks, unless you're looking at them up close, like, look pretty much the same. And even when we did see the mask, like, it felt like the details of it were just like they made them, like, slightly different, but I think that they looked worse than when they did it, like, whatever they were in the original and the sequel. However, I will say that Scarecrow, which is what Man in the Mask is now called, he got a glow up. I think he looked better in this movie.
I guess aesthetically, like, if you're going to make an action figure, maybe he cuts like a more svelte and a more dashing figure. But this is the thing, like, in line with the threat. Mm-hmm. When we finally, because we mill about for a long time, and we can talk about that too. But by the time we finally get to, the shit hitting the fan, where they know they're under attack and everything like that, and little Maya and Ryan are in a room hiding from people who they know are attacking them, and the axe comes through the door, and Scarecrow takes his time, kind of like, after he axes through, like, just kind of like looking through at them, and they're standing there waiting and bracing themselves for something to happen, and then it doesn't, and he's standing there watching them, and you're waiting for something to happen, and then it doesn't. And then he just kind of, like, looks away and just kind of wanders off, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And all I could think, this is one of the moments where I think they were trying to build suspense, like, wait, why is he walking away? Wait, and all I could think was, you've just put an axe through a door, And I don't need "Here's Johnny," but what I heard in my head was, well, the little Scarecrow was just kind of like looking back and forth and then walked away. I can't think of a thing to say. Fuck it. And then just walks away. So I was laughing, and they're terrified, but not. But then I think Ryan tells Maya, like, it's okay, he's gone. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm shrieking.
Oh,
but
gosh.
are you kidding me? It's insanity. It's just, it's, they made them so, that's another thing. Like, we already kind of covered how much Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman's characters were stupid, you know, and the mistakes, the kind of like almost unforgivable mistakes they made, the errors they made in the name of their own survival in the first movie. I feel like these two are maybe more grotesquely contradictory, because sometimes they make good calls, and then sometimes the calls they make are that much stupider because like she had the sense to put shoes on and pants, but after how long? I don't even know. I couldn't check the time signature because I'm in a movie theater.
Well, the scene that you're referencing where
Yeah.
they're in the room and they've locked themselves in and he's got the axe. Because all I could think is, like, the window's right there. Why are you not making an attempt to get out of the window? And it's not until what you said, like, he looks in and walks away that they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. Just like, no, like, you got to get out of it. Like, when adrenaline is going, like, I understand that there is the aspect of being paralyzed by fear, that you're just kind of, like, cowering there, not doing anything. But, like, for both of them to be in that same position, and then to wait until he walks away, and now let's go look out to see if there's a way out this window. And then just like the idea of just like, no, I think he's gone. And like, are you fucking, like, we needed like Brenda from Scary Movie to be there. Like, what? Like, no. So there's like, there was a lot of fucking terrible decisions that they, like, these two were absolutely stupid, and I think the most infuriating at that point is just Ryan with the gun on Pinup Girl, who, by the way, I feel like they swapped the personalities too, because Pinup Girl was acting more dollface in the scenario, where it's just like, here I am, like, you know, like, shoot me, really, and for him to just like, you don't have like, if you're afraid to kill someone, just take the gun and shoot her in the knee or something, like, you know, like anywhere on the leg to like have a non-fatal shot. And then at least now, you know, you've subdued them. And it just really makes me appreciate movies like House of Wax, where at least they like incapacitated the guy, like when he came out of the movie theater. They didn't make sure he was dead, but at least he was incapacitated to a point where like they have him at a disadvantage going forward.
They can get a head start.
Yeah,
right?
so here for him to just like kind of hesitate and then like wait for what's his face to come up, like by the end of the movie, like I'm just like, you know what, you deserved it, because, and that's not a showing of my hand for the vote at the end or the nomination, but it's just like you had ample opportunity to not be in this situation, and you are, and I therefore don't care. That's the thing, I didn't care about these people. I mean, I thought that I just like, I didn't like them, but I just like, I wasn't invested. I wasn't like into who they were. I thought that they were very, very, very thinly written. Like his thing was that he was always hungry. Like, there was like, how many times they're just like, I'm hungry. Like, you just fucking were at a diner, and now you're like going to like, how many times is that going to be a thing that you got to like go and like seek out food? It was not good.
Well, there was another thing that bothered me about them too. Like, from the get-go, when I was watching them, I was waiting for what's the problem, because one of the things that I really, really liked that connected the first two movies that we covered was there's, you know, a kind of domestic situation, and there's a disconnect, like, you know, whether it's 2 or 4 people, there things that need to be said have not been said. People know how much they mean to each other, but something is preventing them from just kind of just coming from that, just behaving naturally and just kind of like doing what feels natural. Something has been thrown into the context of whether it's the couple or the family that has changed everything, and where are we going to go from here? What are our relationships going to be from here on out? And I found that really captivating, maybe more so in the first movie, but there's still elements of it that I really liked in the second movie. I could see what they were trying to do, and with this one, if there is a problem, because again, that's me assigning, kind of like a theme, but it's there. It's not like I pulled it out of thin air. It's there in the first two movies. So in this one, I was like, the main problem, if there is a problem, is that when they go into that spooky town, Venus, Oregon, and
Oregon,
yeah,
Venus.
That was another thing. Like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, I was like, I'm not getting I've been to Oregon. I'm not getting an Oregon vibe from all this. I'm getting like a maybe deep south, or even just like, southerly Midwest kind of feel in the most remote areas, or even like if we went to the other side of the country, maybe back east, like in Maine or something like that. Like, just like, I don't know. And maybe it's just because I've had those territories kind of familiarized for me throughout my career as a horror fan. Like, creepy things happen in those places, and I'm no longer surprised by it. I'm like, yep, because Texas Chainsaw, or because Stephen King, or, like, whatever. It just didn't bespeak a main vibe. An Oregon vibe to me, so there was that. But then, like, so we've got all these creepy people, and they're all just kind of, like, regarding them like the outsiders that they are, and laughing at veganism and whatever. and we find out the problem is, they've been together, 5 years, and he hasn't proposed yet.
Yeah.
Or he proposed, I can't even remember. Did he propose and she said no, so it's just always been kind of on the back burner?
I don't remember. It wasn't...
Yeah, something like that. But, I mean, basically, like, so what you've done is created a weaker problem, and even just like a weaker connection, like for these two to kind of like a weaker point for these two to reach by the end, which is very much cribbing off of the first movie. I thought, like, well, this may as well have been a remake of the first movie, and because it's taken enough of those dynamics, but done them even worse than the first movie did. And I don't think the first movie did them badly, but I just think, like, they're a very pedestrian couple. I never found any kind of relatability between the two of them, because they never stopped joking with each other. They never stopped, hey, da 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 da. I'm like, this is kind of like the vibe of like what the first kill should have been. Whoever that guy in the beginning was, Jeff, the one who had the Airbnb.
Oh, that was such a like a non-scene that I just didn't even register beyond that. Yeah,
I know, and it could have been a hook.
I mean, I want to say that I understand what you're saying, and I would agree for like literally any other horror movie. That like, yeah, make your characters interesting, give them something. But in terms of like the Strangers movies, I feel like all three now, like, yeah, there's that element of human drama, but they don't execute it properly. Like, there was never, I never got invested in any of those couple, like the Kristen and James and whatever family in the second one. So here it was almost like, and not that I'm saying that it's better, but just the fact that they weren't like wallowing in despair of like whatever their situation was. I'm just like, okay, I'm glad at least like they're not like, woe is me, like life is so hard because my boyfriend isn't marrying me, or whatever the fuck the situation is. And it just sort of like, in that regard, they kind of put like, these people were just sort of like devices inside of this like scenario that like, okay, we can just like do like the scares and set up the scares. But I mean, like, that's the thing, that wasn't done successfully either. So it's just sort of, it's just there, the movie is the movie. There was one scene in particular, and it was making me think of Deep Red. In a sense that I was thinking of Deep Red in spite of this movie. But if you haven't seen Deep Red, like, check it out. It's an amazing Italian horror film from 1975, Dario Argento. We talked about it last year. But there's a scene in the movie where the main character, like, he's a pianist. So he's like a jazz pianist. So he's in his apartment and he's just playing the piano. as the killer is kind of like encroaching upon the building, and like they're on the rooftop and just like walking around, and there's like plaster falling on the piano, and he doesn't realize it because he's so engrossed in like playing the piano. But like the cinematography in that scene is phenomenal, and it's just sort of like we're seeing like the inside of the piano, like we're focusing on that, like we're seeing like the fingers down on the keys, we're seeing him like write the music notes, and just like the camera just like gliding across this like page of him writing it, and there's just like we're really getting immersed in this experience of like what he's doing, of just like playing the music. It's just so much part of the scene and the character and everything. And while that's happening, we're seeing like the killer kind of like coming in, and he's not realizing it, and the camera kind of does this tracking, this like quick backtrack away from the piano, like out of the room to the front entrance, and we see the door open and the killer's shoes come in. It's just like beautiful. Like it's so effective. It's like you just don't see stuff like that. And here all we're seeing is like her from behind playing the piano, and goes on for like 2 minutes or whatever, and then we slowly kind of pull out, or it comes into focus, and we just see Baghead, Scarecrow, whatever, standing there. And I can't remember if they did like a reverse shot and we saw him standing behind her, which I guess was like sort of like supposed to be like the scene in the original where he just kind of walks in to frame, right. Which I think that's a great moment in that movie. I think that it wasn't executed as good as it could be. Like I mentioned that in that podcast. But it just felt like that was a moment where they were recreating it. Where it's just like, if you weren't so much thinking about like, how can we just do this over or recycle it? You could have done something like how they did in Deep Red, of just like really kind of playing with what's going on. Like, really like putting us into the piano, putting us into like her perspective is like playing the piano rather than just her from behind playing it. So just like details like that, which I mean, that's more intricate, but I mean, it makes a world of difference in the final product.
I think it was also, again, I could see Rennie Harlin like showing me, the director showing me, look how scary this situation is. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Is something going to happen soon? Because by the time they did the exact same thing later, when Maya got into the shower and he walks in and he's right behind the shower door, which is clear, opaque, but clear. Like you could see there's a person there and you can see what he looks like. And they just wear a man wearing a mask who's taller than you. And she never turns around and looks at him. And I couldn't, again, it's another thing. I was just like, I couldn't tell. Obviously, the strangers, one characteristic of all of them is that it's the whole cat and mouse thing. They're playing with their food before they're finally going to devour and attack and all of that. But I got so bored. I was checked out by the time she was in the shower. Also because that was another point of stupidity for her. She kept hearing strange noises outside.
Well, that girl came back to the door like 3 times.
Yeah, she came back and she knocked, and then she was singing a lullaby outside. Oh, I think I'll smoke some weed. Oh, I think I'll strip my clothes off and take a shower. Like, okay, I'm no longer on your side. You were still behaving like not even a first act, but a prologue victim. Yeah. And I'm not rooting for you. I'm just waiting for something bad to happen to you at this point.
That's a good point, because like in the original, because that's when he went for cigarettes or milk or whatever the fuck.
Right.
And
cigarettes for her.
And we didn't follow him, but we were just with her, and like shit was going on. Like they were, outside the window, like clearly scaring her and doing and shit. And she got to that point of like mania where she was like freaking out, and then the boyfriend came home. But here they kind of do the same thing, and then he has the moment where he's just like, you're just seeing things. It's the painting, see? Oh, and also, what's with him? It was like doing the Silence of the Lambs, like the male gaze thing. Where
I know. Although it was hers. Like, it was her looking at him. So it was the female gaze, I suppose, but at the same time, it wasn't. Yeah. Because,
that was still like the thing with like Clarice.
Clarice's POV. Yeah, Clarice's POV, 100%.
And I don't mind, because I mean, like, I'll let Foray Gutierrez, who
Yeah.
played Ryan, like he can stare into my
Right.
soul all day long.
Yeah, sure,
But it was
yeah.
but it was just like, why, like, where did this come from all of a sudden? At least it was like a consistent thing in Silence of the Lambs. And then he's sort of like, no, it was this. And he's just like, did you smoke weed? Like, sort of like just now, like, well, even in this scenario, both of them are fucking stupid. But then they're like, let's eat. And they're like having fucking burgers or whatever. And it's like, everything, we've completely forgot about everything. And at this point, what is the runtime? It must have been like 45 minutes. I don't know. It was well into the movie.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're such a messy eater. And there's like blood dripping on his hand.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, the only thing I could guess is like, was that the chicken? Was that one of the chickens?
Yes. Yeah,
because that was not clear. That was not clear.
Oh,
at all.
okay, I got it.
Well, no, I put it together because it's like, what else could it be? But it just like, it was.
Why did it wait?
It never like did like enough of like, it didn't establish it in the action of what was happening for me to like register that was a chicken. But then that, of course, that was the thing where they're like, oh, shit's going down. Like now we gotta, start getting all crazy.
Yeah, I've been watching some of the promotional material for this movie because it is still in theaters as of this recording, and one of the hilarious things, I haven't seen the trailers yet, so maybe it's in the trailer, but in the promotional material, when they're doing the interviews and stuff, they are showing that scene, and I thought actually within the context, that was one of the things I thought kind of worked, just because I was like, I was watching the ketchup drip from his burger, thinking the same thing, like, oh, it looks like blood. Okay, they're doing this for a reason. And then I saw blood dropping, and I knew it was blood, and I was like, what could that possibly be? So when it was a chicken, because they had established the chickens already, I was like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. I didn't know what it was going to be. I thought maybe it'd be like the dead body of Jeff or something like that. Well, only we don't find that until much later. But so at least I thought that kind of worked, but watching it out of context, just as a promotional moment, it looks like she's terrified of a chicken, and it is so much funnier that way. But I also just to touch on like the setup, like with these characters and stuff like that, because I feel like he's introduced. He's not a jerk, but I'm leaning more into the jerky aspects of his character early on, and wondering, are you going to be a jerk? Like,
I don't think he just had a short fuse. That was his thing.
Well, because I mean, the way that he like immediately started like openly accusing like the weird people in the town, like the mechanic Rudy, of like our car didn't have a problem, and then we went in there, and then we came out here. It's like, well, why didn't you park it somewhere where you could see it from the window? That's like road trip 101. Like, park your car somewhere where you can see it, so people can't fuck with it, and if they do fuck with it, you'll see it. I don't know. And then she's trying to calm him down and stuff like that, and I'm just kind of like, I've seen this hothead male and like kind of even-tempered female trying to keep him from ruining everything for them, because like these are the only people they can rely on. Like I don't know. It didn't make him sympathetic toward me. And then again, your Clarice POV, that was so condescending to me. Just like the fact that he's like, babe, come on, like people are here. Look, wait. I figured it out.
And they they had the fucking girl like came up to the house twice at that point. Because then he ran out and he's just like, get out of here. And that was actually when she scurried away.
But I mean, and it's not like I don't want it to sound like I'm completely closed off to new vibes. When it first started, though, my dander went up a bit, because like I said, there was about a half hour, as is custom these days, about a half hour to 45 minutes worth of trailers before these movies now. And some of them were really, really good. But in two of the trailers, it opened with like a drone shot of trees. Of a heavily wooded area. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, oh, this is a trend. I mean, I've seen it before, but okay, a lot of people are doing this. And then what does this movie open with? A fucking drone shot over trees. If
you're going to do something like that, you got to do like The Shining. Like,
coming in
everybody,
like, Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Everybody
you got to have a good score.
The vastness.
Yeah.
It's been done to death at this point. It's like, okay, there's more. Give me immediacy. Like, why don't you? This is one point where I'm like, we're living in a tick TikTok generation, get to the point. Like, if you're not going to establish mood, which I don't think this movie does successfully, kind of almost periodic, like, I mean, almost consistently, I feel like the tone's just off. Whatever you're trying to do, I'm just kind of shrugging and going, really? Because even... Oh my god!
Well, you mentioned the 30 minutes of trailers and stuff. Why do theaters not like they give a showtime? They should give a showtime, and then they should give the actual showtime.
I know, but everybody anticipates it now. Like, there are so many people who know what time to walk in, like right at the cusp of that last trailer, or just as it's saying, feature presentation, buy popcorn, turn your phones off, do all this stuff, and then people are just then grabbing their seats, and I'm like, you missed out. There were some good trailers, but anyway, and you know, it's usually for movies that I don't know about. That I'm like, oh, cool, I'm totally seeing that. But with this also, because that was another thing that they established early on, were those Mormon boys, and I was just kind of like, did you forget? If you're gonna go in a different direction, at least let there be maybe a reason for it. But the Mormon boys, that's what this movie did. It made me appreciate the first movie more. Like, I wasn't singing its praises as, you know, the next Second Coming, or you know, an incredible feat of filmmaking. I just thought it was mostly successful, and I leaned more toward liking it. I lean even harder now because I think about the Mormon boys in the first movie, and what they, as I was walking out of this one, I thought, in that movie they represented innocence, and not just like innocence. Like, these were not juvenile delinquents who were like breaking into the house to like steal nudie magazines and beer, or, you know, or even like kids who like kicked their ball into the yard. These were kids who were on a mission, who were trying to kind of like spread light, you know, before, and only because they're being told to. So there's something really docile and really corruptible about them, and they're the ones who encounter the scene, you know, the kill scene basically. And then we go into the movie. But they always were effective for me, because I'd always see them kind of absorbing the environment and not knowing what to do and worrying about these kids. In this movie, they're like the twins in The Shining. They're like, it's just like, they literally get their own dramatic sting, I think, when like the couple turns around and suddenly they're there.
They're
boom,
there. Well, so
Mormon boys.
I have the opposite opinion of you here, because I thought that they were just filler in the original. Like, they didn't need to be there, and I hated that whole. I hate that aspect of the opening where it just like death and destruction, and then like 24 hours earlier. Like, sometimes it can be effective, but like not the way it was done there. And I guess I kind of leaned into like liking them just showing up there because they were weird, and it was just like, it felt very campy, and there was almost like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe here that wasn't in the original. And I mean, like, now it's like sort of Strangers Chapter 1 seems like it's gonna be blending like multiple franchises into this, I guess, to make it more interesting. But just like seeing this like town and these people, it's just like, okay, like there's weird people here. It's cliche and it's fucked up, but it's just like, okay, I'm at least a little bit more interested in what is going to happen, because I'm pretty sure this is a planned trilogy. Initially, this was, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, but this is based on the information that I've read about the movie, is that this was just one script initially. They overwrote the fuck out of this movie. And they realized, oh, we've got 3 movies in here. Like, it's like 4.5 hours worth of material. So let's like cut it up into 3 parts. And that's what they ended up doing here. So all these people, like these characters in the diner and whatnot, I'm pretty sure that what they're doing is like they're setting them up because like the waitress who dropped them off there, like I bet she's gonna turn out to be Dollface. It's gonna be revealed that they're the strangers, and like, you know, Ryan's instincts of just like, this is a scam are right, that like these people are actually like planning this whole thing. Whether or not I'm like interested, like, see, that's the thing. If it was all one movie, that might have, I don't think it would have been effective, but it would have been like, oh, okay. But now at this point, it's just like, we got to watch 3 movies and at the end just be like, oh, ta-da! It was that couple in the diner the whole time, and the waitress or whatever, you know, like, even though it wouldn't make any sense because they were at the little food stand while
right,
she was
the
getting...
couple was for sure.
But I mean,
yeah.
but the thing is, like, ever since Scream
Yeah.
6, I don't really have much faith that, like, logic is a key factor in a lot of these horror movies. But you get this. So this movie, for all of its flaws and all the shit that it's been getting, this cost $8.5 million to make. And I forget what we said the original movie's budget was. I'll look it up here. But, like, so far this has made $24 million at the time of recording this, which is May 28th. So this is a success. I mean, there's a lot of First Omen came out, and that's kind of a flop. Like, the budget for that was, like, exorbitantly high. Same with, like, Abigail. Like, studios are making these movies that are way too expensive, and they're not seeing the return. So, I mean, this is doing it right. And people are saying, like, oh, this was terrible, it's going to go to streaming. Maybe, but I mean, the fact is that, like, people showed up for this. They wanted to see it. So it's very likely that, it could, like, because the plan is to release these all this year, or it might be, like, into next year, into, like, spring of next year. But, like, the budget
within a year, yeah.
Yeah, the budget for the original was $9 million. And I think most of that probably went to Liv Tyler. I don't know, like, Madeline Petch? Is that her name? I don't like. She was on Riverdale. I never watched it, so I don't really know her. But she was like a producer on this, so maybe she, like, a lot of that went to her. But I mean, like, this doesn't look like an expensive movie. Like, they made the best of their budget. Like, when they're in the woods later and there's, like, all the fog and stuff, like, it looks gorgeous. Like, most studios would make a movie that looked like this and ask for $30 million to make it. That's what they needed. So Rennie Harlan, for, like, all the the other things, like, at least he effectively made the movie look expensive in just on a scale of, like, how every other horror movie looks. And I appreciate the look of this movie because everything comes out nowadays and it just, like, it has that brown hue, or, like, really, like, desaturated, just, like, it looks ugly. This was a good looking movie.
I'm glad you're bringing that up, because I did see a bit of an interview with Rennie Harlan, and one thing that he emphasized was the attention to detail as much as they could, in terms of, like, they really wanted to pay attention to lighting. They didn't want it to look like every other movie. And I agree with you. That is something that's a boon to this film. It's really it's successful in that, like, if I don't flip through channels anymore, but if I were flipping through channels on cable, now it's satellite. If this movie were to come on, just by looking at it, I would know what movie I'm watching. There's something readily identifiable. There's a clear, I don't know if I would call it visual style, but production design 100%. And so that's discernible. And I think that's to the movie's credit. I also think it's just... I also watched an interview with Madeleine Petch. I watched a few, actually. She's really, really peppy. She's got a great energy about her. She's very, like, I know that she picked up a lot of things and changed them to try and make, particularly her character, smarter, which makes me think, what was she on the page originally? Because I don't find her particularly smart.
No.
But, like, I mean, initially, like, when she started hearing noises, I said, like, you could potentially be in danger here, and I'm like, weapon? And my sister, who I went to see the movie with, whispered right next to me, pants. And I was like, right. And she did put on pants. She did get a shoe. And then there were moments as the movie went on, after she was kind of, like, dumb because we need to build suspense or whatever for the first half of the movie. I think she was the one who made sure they kept the gun with them when he wasn't carrying it. Like, she was grabbing it so they could get into the car together. She was the one who had the idea to go underneath the house into the crawl space and everything like that. And had a scene that I thought almost worked. Which is when her hand came down on that nail. Because for characters I found mostly unsympathetic until that point, I did sympathize with that. I was like, oh, that sucks. Now you got to get a tetanus shot if you survive. And, and also, I mean, she was trying so hard not to scream that then I was like, okay, this is good, because you're not screaming. You're not being stupid, but pain. And I want to say both of them anything that we're saying about the characters, for me, I won't speak for you, but if you agree, feel free to chime in. Mm-hmm. I don't blame either of the actors for the stupid things that we're talking about with their characters. I thought they actually showed up and did really, really good work with what they were told to do. They filled in those characters pretty well. They did
the best with the material that they worked with. I think that the movie was cast well in terms of that. It's just the writing. And now you're making me think of My Bloody Valentine 3D, where those, like, when they were just like, okay, we have to be quiet, and then they start running away, like, and like, really? So I mean, I appreciate a situation like this where just like there's actually a possibility that you're like pulling this big fucking nail out of your hand that you're gonna make a noise, because that's just painful.
And I was talking to the screen like under my breath, and that means that particular moment of the movie is working, because I was looking at him, at Ryan, going like, "Take it out quick, just pull it out quick, come on." Like I was coaching them from my seat. That's effective filmmaking.
That was the most effective moment of the movie.
But the horrible thing was, even that I had a problem being completely like kind of enwrapped in, because the second he pulled it out and he tore, I guess, the bottom cuff of his t-shirt or whatever and wrapped it around, to give her a tourniquet. All I could think, again, I think I kept wanting some relief, whether it was laughter or screaming or, fear or delight, whatever. Because all I could think after they finally kind of resolved that and were ready to move on, like he's checking in with her, he's worried about her. She's like, okay. And then they start to move again. All I could think was, wouldn't it be hilarious if her other hand went down and another nail went through it?
Yeah. I mean, it was.
I shouldn't be thinking that about my protagonists when I'm making
the most effective I can think of just like something like that was probably in Ready or Not, when Samara, when she was like climbing out of that goat pit, and then put her, because she was already shot in the hand. She had a bullet hole in it, and then it went right on that. So, I mean, that was really done effectively there.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of because his whole thing, and I was actually thinking of Scream 5 and 6, like, or little Jenna Ortega with her inhaler, because he had the inhaler thing, which was an annoying fucking, like, they must have watched Scream 5 and they're just like, what plot device can we use to get him away from here? And just like the inhaler. It all comes down to the inhaler. But he lost it.
It was a trope when it was in Scream 5.
Yeah.
Like by that point, it was already
he lost
a trope,
it, and then he was doing the whole thing with the water bottle. And I mean, like,
does that work?
I have no idea. I'm like, I guess. I mean, that's the thing. I'm a dummy with like some movies. Sometimes if there's anything like medical, I'll just kind of accept it as the truth, regardless of whether it actually would work or not. And I think that was probably a good idea on paper, of just sort of like him having this asthma attack and just like finding whatever was like the closest to him. But I don't know, there's just something about that, like there's just the direction of that as well. It's just like it didn't work as effectively as it could have in that scenario. And maybe that was
100%.
Like maybe it was just the setting. Maybe if that had happened like when they were under the house or something, or just like when they were trying to be as quiet as possible. Because there's just like it felt like they were just it was almost like it was going into Texas Chainsaw 03 territory, where it's just like running to like the next thing and then the next thing,
right?
Where she's like in that shallow grave with the leaves all covering her and trying to get the bars on her phone. It's just like, just move it along. Come on, like we don't like do something rather than these like empty. That is like empty tension to me, empty calories in a horror movie.
Well, I couldn't remember. It paid off. I don't know about paid off, but it made more sense at the end of the sequence than it did at the beginning, with her covering herself with the leaves, because I was watching her and all I could think was like, you're going to cover yourself with leaves. I don't know where she is in relation to you, but she can step right on you or step on your face or whatever. And then I realized like, oh, you're like in a ditch. Like, I think they finally revealed like when we saw the bird's eye view, not even the bird's eye view, but just kind of like, I don't know, the grave view, the 6 feet under view, where you're just laying there and you see Dollface, I believe, is the one who moves into the frame and everything.
I don't know. It could have been pinup. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, right. one of the ladies,
Yeah.
one of the lady killers. She moves into the frame and she just kind of like looks what we think is like almost directly at her, at Maya, and then kind of does a pan, turns around, looks back suspiciously, and that, again, I was not enough in the movie to not be able to think about funny bits that like actually might have endeared me more. Like, come on, go towards light and fluffy, strangers, make that movie, because all I could think is Dollface was doing that, you know, looking around suspiciously look and everything like that, and then walked out of frame. I always thought it would be funny is just as soon as she walked out of frame from that 6 feet under POV, if the head popped right back into frame, like, ah, I got you. Oh, okay, I guess there's nobody there. And then just walked away. Just a little comedic nod would have, I don't know, charmed me. But,
I mean, I just wish that there was more of a fight back sort of thing. And that was kind of, that's why I appreciated Prey at Night more, because they got to a point where they're like, okay, that's enough is enough. Like, fuck these people. Let's kill. Like, it's almost like the scene in Wrong Turn where they're finally like, let's fling one of these fuckers out of the tree. Like, just do something.
Right.
You know, like, especially in situations like that where she's hiding in the leaves. As far as she knows, it's just one-on-one. The other two strangers aren't anywhere around. Like, use that to your advantage. Like, just like, you know, you can pack a punch too. Like, your adrenaline is going, like, especially if you have a weapon, like, just do something, fight back against your captors. And, you know, we're living in an age where final girls, you know, like, I hate to say it because I hate this trope, but sort of like the boss girl, cunty, you know, like whatever, where just like, which probably started with like Jessica Biel in at TCM03, where just like, I'm like a strong woman, like almost like the what's it called, the Mary Sue or whatever.
Oh,
we're
right,
just like, I'm capable and I'm gonna do that and I'm just gonna like fuck shit up. Like, you don't have to be 100% that. Like, I want to see characters that are flawed and shit, but I want to see someone make an attempt. And that's something that like really pissed me off in the original Strangers, and that's something that pissed me off here, where it's just like, you're just biding your time. You're just, you know, he's coming through the door with an axe. You're just sitting there and like being like, whatever. Even at the end, where okay, and this is I guess this is how they made it different here. They're sitting in the chairs. We're as like only looking at them because the camera is right on them. We don't see that the strangers are just standing around waiting to stab him with the knife. But I'm thinking, like, even have a conversation, like, rather than just being like, marry me or whatever, like, this is our last chance. Let's try to strategize one last thing. Even if we fail, like, let's just get the fuck out of here. Like, fall over in your chair, break the chair apart, get to your feet, like, run the fuck away, like, something, rather than just, like, sitting there and letting it happen. Like, that's the like, I always feel like with at least the first and this movie, it's just like, we're just waiting and watching these like, things happen to these characters, rather than watching these characters make the movie happen around them.
This was another thing where I was like, that maybe this is why the movie isn't to my taste. And not here I'm talking like, I'm sure that maybe somebody somewhere likes this movie, but all across the board, even the people who were asking me, wow, yes, or wow, bad, you know? And I was saying, and they were just kind of chime back, like, I mean, most of them hadn't seen it yet, and they were like, I mean, I haven't heard good things. Like, no one is, like, you know, favoring this film, which kind of makes me sad. But I also have to say, my own experience, I love to find little microcosms of, like, why is it missing the mark so much? Like, this could be working, and why isn't it? And it was at the top of that sequence you're talking about, where they're sitting there tied together, and I think it's when Ryan starts to come to, and it's a shot of him in a close-up, I think, and it's really, really fuzzy and foggy. And then they start to put him into focus as he starts to, like, come awake, and then he looks at her. And I could think, again, from a filmmaking standpoint, as I'm sitting there trying to enjoy this movie that's almost over, I'm like, all I could think was, no, No, if you want to put us in his experience, I mean, it's not like it's never been shot that way. I understand the technique, but the more effective thing would be give us his POV. You brought up Jessica Biel in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even that I didn't agree with the way that was executed. Her POV when she's in Arlie Ermey's lap and he's pouring beer on her as though her eyes are open, but she would have been unconscious, so her eyes can't be open, but it's still her POV somehow. So I'm like, okay, I find issue with that, but I take even more issue with this because I'm like, if you would have like given us his hands or his hand, because his head is kind of like bobbed to one side and he sees this hand is tied as it's coming into focus, and then pan over to the other hand and that hand is tied, and then slowly rise up to see that Maya's with you and she's either crying or waiting or whatever it is that she's doing, you know, she's there with you. She is also tied up. You're in the same predicament. Even that alone would immerse me a little bit more just into the immediacy of the moment. So I'm like, yeah, this movie, like, even when I can see what it's trying to do, I'm like, there are more effective ways to achieve this. And it's either something that's been recycled from the first movie that I felt is done to a lesser degree, or it's something new that's been brought and I don't understand why. And I was kind of shocked when I saw Courtney Solomon, the producer, was in an interview promoting this movie, and he was in on, I don't know if he was still in a production context originally with the first two, but he was on board for them and understood, according to him, what makes these movies popular and what people come to them for and how they wanted to kind of honor what came before. And one thing that he was adamant about was not remaking the original movie, because fans, according to him, would never accept that. And as he's talking, I'm like, this is all very, very cool sentiment, but you did remake the first movie largely. I mean, even just to the point of like, we reached the same climactic moment, the exchange between the two of them, only it's even more bluntly spelled out in this one. That's one thing about the first movie. I get what's happening between Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman as they're, you know, tied up side by side in the broad light of day, as it's, you know, coming through their windows and everything, and they know it's over and they're going to get killed, and their heads are pressed up against each other, and they know they love each other. They know that whatever marriage, you know, or wedding was or wasn't on the horizon, their bond was never in question. They were always going to love each other, consider each other, and fight for each other. And I love that moment even more now that I see this one where it's full on spelled out, where the guy who couldn't get the girl to marry him, or who couldn't, for whatever it was, I can't even remember, or couldn't
the fact that we don't even remember just like shows that it wasn't.
And then he just says, marry me. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, way to, see, it almost made me angry with him, because I was like, way to not have to follow through on your proposal when you know that either both of you are going to die or at least one of you will. You're bleeding out a lot onto that rug just seconds later, sir. And she says yes, and I'm like, this is not effective, especially because I can't stop comparing it to the original in my head. I mean, did you think that moment worked at all?
No, I mean, I don't think that it worked in the original either. I you know, there was a lot, you know, go back to that episode. There's just like the criticisms I had. I didn't like the fact that it didn't show their faces. I thought that would have been like, that's almost like the opposite of Michael Myers' mask coming off in the original Halloween, and like what John Carpenter was doing, just to show like, this is just a regular kid. Well, not a regular kid, but it was a human. So it was like they were trying. They're almost like the Rob Zombie version of Halloween with the strangers. Like, we're gonna just do the opposite because fuck John Carpenter. And
even down to the set pieces in the climax too.
Yeah,
like Rob Zombie's Halloween did the same thing too.
But yeah, with this, I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of the promotional marketing and the trailers like showed, like, we saw that they were in the chair, so we just like I kind of just, everything was kind of spelled out for me with this movie, and it just like everything kind of was just put together in a very predictable way. So the moments that I did that weren't shown, I just assumed like it was going to be like long drawn out scenes of like, you know, tension that were probably not going to be very effective, and I just took out of the movie why maybe I'm walking away from this like a little bit more, like not even positive, but just very much like middle of the road. Which is why I couldn't have a wow, because it's just like there is nothing wow. It's just like, oh, okay, you know, like, okay. It doesn't, there's no wow in one direction or the other. It's just like, I thought it looked good. And it met my expectations of what I thought it would be. I actually like, because in the original I said that I wanted more Scott Speedsman. I wanted to see what was going on with his character. So I liked that, you know, they actually took that cue when they were making it and just being like, yeah, we need more of the male counterpart here and to show more of that, so it's not as disjointed. And I think that it didn't work successfully, but it held my interest more. That's the thing that I want to stress here. I was never like at any point thinking like this is great, but I was at least able to kind of be led through it without getting fidgety. You know, there was a point towards the end I'm just like, okay, let's wrap it up. But still, like for enough of the time, I mean, this is still a probably 90-minute movie, 91 minutes. It felt longer than that, but I mean, it wasn't any more egregious than a lot of the other things that have been coming out that are even longer than 90 minutes and feel even longer than 2 hours. So, I mean, all in all, like this is smack dab middle of the road for me. Like, I mean, I don't have anything extremely positive to say. I don't have anything extremely negative to say. So, I mean, I'm glad that I saw it, and I think that it's why I love seeing movies, like even if they are bad, is that it gives me perspective to look at other movies and just know this. And this is like a thing with like Letterboxd where, you know, I try not to be like overly hyperbolic of like rating things. Like obviously there are movies that are very special to me and I probably unapologetically will say that's a 5-star movie, even though I know that other people aren't going to see it that way. But I typically will be realistic. And if something is like really bad or just disappoints me, I have to think about it and just be like, is this like bottom of the barrel, really? Like, is this, you know, what are the issues here? And I think that this movie is fine. Like, I'm sure I'll see it again at some point. I mean, I'm not like overly eager to, but yeah, I mean, that's my takeaway. It's fine. It's like subpar of middling for me. Yeah.
But I mean, again, not like I agree with you. Not bottom of the barrel by any means. Like people who are saying this is the worst. It always makes me think about the expectations people go in with too. Like, I mean, how many people, when the trailers for Halloween 2018 were first out, and there were so many people who were like, I know this is going to be my favorite movie of the year. I mean, just the first of that new trilogy, just Halloween 2018. People would go in expecting it to be the greatest, you know, of the franchise. It'll probably even surpass my love of the original. Or, you know, I'm watching people speculate about something they've watched like less than 3 minutes of footage from, or if they've seen 2 trailers, less than 6 minutes. And then I felt multiple times, because I think I saw that at least 2 times in the theater, maybe 3. I could feel like the lean in at the beginning, and then gradually, even during the opening sequence, I could feel people leaning slowly back, like this is how they're starting it. And I would be like, guys, this is why we don't get overhyped, you know, in my own mind. I didn't stand up and deliver a dissertation, but
to be fair to those Halloween movies, because we covered all the Halloween new trilogy, not our bag, but it's, you know, comparatively to something like this, David Gordon Green did something different. And that it didn't work for a lot of people, but when you weigh that against the complaints that we're seeing here, and with a lot of things, it's just the same thing. You're just doing the same thing over. Well, you know, you have to think about it like, well, you did get something different and you didn't like it. So I think that it's a thing where it's hard to kind of gauge, because like audiences need to be able to articulate better what they want, or, you know, even then it's just like, is the studio going to be listening to those people? Because the studio doesn't. They listen to dollars. And the thing is, like, this has made $24 million as of May 28th. So in like 11 days of being released, this has made almost 3 times its budget. That like this is what the studios see, and they're just like, okay, let's just do this derivative stuff, and that's what makes money. So it's just like at the end of the day, we can't really complain. Like we can complain, but we can't like blame ourselves or just like blame the studios or things like that. Like we should blame ourselves is what I'm saying, because we're showing up and contributing this. But I love movie theater experiences. I don't like, I'm tired of Netflix shit. Like I got rid of Netflix. I want to go to the movies and see this. Like I'm glad that I went. I had a great time. I didn't have a wonderful time, but I had a great time with myself, you know, like just like and my friend who I went with. Like I wasn't invested in the movie as much as because it wasn't a great movie, but I loved the experience of being able to go. And I think that that's, you know, me trying to find a silver lining here. That might be the capper
the
of
subtext.
It. Yeah,
I know, but I agree. I mean, I definitely had a good time. Like I'm not making it to the theaters as often as I would like to lately because life is exploding. But I was happy to sit there. I was happy to, you know, sit with my sister, and I was happy to actually kind of bond a bit with the audience purely through the film watching, because for the longest time, through I'd say easily the first 2/3 of the movie, it was a pretty packed house, and everybody except for my sister and I and the people to our left, everybody was kind of dead silent. So we were the only ones having like vocal reactions, either laughing or going, "What?" And it was by the end of it, by the time we reached the end, that sting, because you stuck around for, it's barely a post-credit sequence, but it was like about maybe 20 seconds of trailers, of credits, and then all of a sudden, like we've left Maya.
Oh my god, is it going to be Halloween 2 in the hospital? Strangers Chapter 2.
Oh my god, I hope not, because she gets up and all of a sudden he's there, like that's supposed to mean something, and whether he's there literally and she's going to have to fight him, or like, you know, end of Black Christmas 2006 style, but feature length, or whether he's there figuratively, like, you know, he'll always be with you, you know, kind of thing. I don't care. I don't like either of them. And everybody, like, there were a bunch of us laughing from about the point that Froy Gutierrez, Ryan, was holding the gun up to Pinup Girl's head, and then slowly kind of instructing her to do things that were all like, just shoot her! Like, people were finally starting to chime in. We were all together. And then by the end of it, we were groaning, we were laughing, we were applauding ironically, like that slow clap, you know? And I was like, okay, that was fun. And I do have to say one more thing that I was grateful for in terms of just the performance. Because for Gutierrez's performance, I actually found him... Like, the couple on paper is incredibly pedestrian in the things the movie has them do. But what they do, they took opportunities to infuse their characters with humanity. And one that really I liked a lot, that I don't necessarily get from the original movie, is when he's finally got the gun and they hear the footsteps from around the corner. And they don't know who it is, but they think it's one of the strangers, and he's bracing himself, getting ready to shoot them. But he had this thing where he almost had like a little mini breakdown. Like, he welled up, he was quivering a little bit, and you could tell how fucking scared he was of who was around the corner and what he was about to have to do to another human being. It didn't make up for what happened with Pinup later, but it made him a human being. It was something that I don't have like a vivid memory of in either of the previous movies. It made him a more interesting person, a dimensional person. And then I thought, actually, that I'm trying to give the movie a win. I thought it was going to turn out to be Rudy the mechanic with their car. So when it turned out not to be Rudy, but turned out to be, what was his name, Joe, the guy who owned the Airbnb. Sure. His name's Joe. I just looked at my notes. I was taking notes in the dark. Joe. Oh, I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot all about that guy. That's right, the refrigerator. Okay, well, didn't see that coming. I still, again, the payoff, I still prefer, you know, Sunny in Philly coming home.
With Glenn Howerton and that was the reason why that worked better is because we're watching him walk in.
Yes.
The Scarecrow, the killer formerly known as Man in the Mask, creeping up behind him with the axe. That was actually executed very well. Like, that's probably the best part of that whole movie. Anyway, we're going over here, so let's wrap things up and get to the cherry picker. So we need a cherry on top, and
Jesus,
I'm at a loss here.
I liked Shelley the waitress because she was someone who because afterwards is the thing. She was nice, and I couldn't tell. And it's one of those things where there's a lot of things that I can't tell. Is this going to pay off later in the movie, like the identities of the killers and whatever? I just couldn't tell. Like, even if she's not Dollface or pinup girl. What if
or
she's
maybe even
still
Scarecrow,
or even Scarecrow, yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe she's got lifts. But if she's I couldn't tell. Like, okay, was she being really, really friendly to them? Because she mentioned something about like big tippers get favors or free rides or something like that, and I was just kind of like, okay, we don't know how much he tipped though. So are you like being sincere and you're being friendly and you're giving them a ride to the Airbnb like a good neighbor, or are you being sarcastic because the tip was shit and you're complicit, so you're happy to serve them to the Airbnb on a silver platter? It made her interesting to me.
He seems like he would be a good tipper. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
Okay, but I just
obviously they eat out a lot, so I mean they know that like we have to be good to our but then I guess he was kind of a shit but they were weird to him. They were weird because when he's just like, I'm just waiting for my turkey scramble or whatever, but they were pressing them, so I don't know, it's hard to say. I'm fine with giving it to her. I mean, I would even be fine with giving it to one of the couple. I just don't know who, and I just don't know why. Like, it doesn't matter. It waitress, sure. What's her name? Shelley the waitress. Okay. I liked her way. I thought she was going to figure into the movie more so, and she didn't. Maybe
so I'm looking forward to her. Yeah. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, maybe I'll love her even more.
All right. So last time on the cherry picker, we asked you who deserves to die the most in John Carpenter's Vampires. I nominated Tony Montoya. You nominated Jack Crow. Across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. This was a very light turnout because I guess this is not a popular movie anymore. 169 for Tony Montoya versus 215 for Jack Crow.
Oh my god!
Yeah. Amethyst Frost. Jack. This is a total Jared Leto kill the character because of the actor situation. Michael CZ, another John Carpenter classic, Lost Boys and Salem's Lot, and that's my trilogy of great vampire flicks. Sean Prinsick, I hated all the characters in that movie, and Jack is no exception. I'll choose Jack because he was a complete asshat. From what I remember, Tony had more altruistic motives at one point. Tony's main crime was that he was an idiot. Can't believe John Carpenter made that film. So sad.
Right.
Oscar Wicks. Both are pretty unlikable pricks, which is so strange. So far, Carpenter's heroes and anti-heroes were all awesome. But I choose Jack Crow. From what I remember, Tony at least tried to be nice, decent at times, or am I wrong? At least after being bitten. Also, in his case, there was at least something nicely tragic due to the fact of him becoming a vampire. Cheers, guys. Cheers. Strifen19. Curious to see why one of you picked Jack. My vote's for the Baldwin brother since he was stupid and got himself bit. Clinton Wolf. For what it's worth, in the book, they all pretty much die except for maybe the preacher and Jack becomes a vampire. Oh so wow. I guess it is more closely aligned with the vampires. Ka-ching! Because it's a dollar sign through the S. That's how I would say it. Wow. Tex Not Dead says, I don't understand Jack being here.
Oh, honey. Okay.
I mean, wasn't my
movie
nomination,
again.
but
Yeah, right.
That's totally fair. Denise, easy choice. Jack, and also, would you guys consider talking about 775? That movie isn't much talked about online. What is it?
I've never heard of it. I don't know.
It's like 75, but like with a 7 where the S should be and a 5 where the F should be. I've never. So no, to answer your question.
Sorry.
Just nip that in the bud right now. Silent Saturn, 2 options where both try very hard to outdo each other when it comes to being complete garbage people. Montoya has the slight edge for also being grapey on top, and that's a grape emoji on top of everything else. Absolutely hated this film and struggled to finish it. To quote Zack, I'd rather watch Halloween Resurrection than this. Did I say that?
Did you?
I'll take your word for it. I don't know. Probably the worst movie you covered so far. Don't do that again. I still think it was Halloween Resurrection or Leprechaun. One of those two.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Blue Box 87. I tried rewatching this a few years ago, and it was so gross and misogynistic that I couldn't do it. So the lesser Baldwin, which at this point may be a compliment, or James Woods. I picked James Woods. Sorry. From what I remember, Jack Crow is a failed tough guy anti-hero who's just extremely unlikable. And then Borderland We Run just says everyone. So you are up first. You gotta give us someone here.
Okay, I'm sorry. And I just sung his praises, but I gotta pick Ryan. I can't get over that one of the biggest points of contention for me from the second movie was echoed in this one, where you have a young man, but not that young, pointing a gun at his assailant and does not pull the trigger, and not in a way that endears me to him, that makes me think, you're right. I can't get on his side. I just think he's a fucking idiot, and he's the reason the movie ends the way it does. And if he's dead, he deserves it. He really does. He had your chance, sir. I'm sorry to shame the victim, but that's what I'm doing this week.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm gonna go with Jesus. What was there's a whole subplot where there was a wedding that they weren't at. I guess that was more subtext of just to be marriage. Or remember she was on the call because what was the reason they weren't at that wedding? Because I would say if they weren't invited, then kill that couple. But I don't know. See, I didn't plan for this. I just figured I'd come up with someone on the go. So I'm gonna actually say Joe, and I'm glad you pointed out his name because I was just gonna say the Airbnb owner because that guy sucks. I mean, he's not there. I don't know how this whole thing was sort of organized. It does seem very shady. He didn't pick up the phone. He didn't call them back. I mean, he might have if it was after the phone was destroyed, but I mean, he wasn't very helpful. He showed up and rather than knocking on the door or calling around for help, he's just letting himself into the house while people are staying there. And that is a big no-no. I have a huge problem with owners, improperly or illegally entering places of residence that people are renting or otherwise. So, that was really douchey. And I mean, even though it sucks that, he got blown away, I mean, he probably could have avoided that by being I'm here to check the fridge or whatever. Also, having an Airbnb where there's not a working fridge. Come on. And he's also got guns lying around. That is just not safe. Who is this Airbnb owner? Kill him. That's
Joe,
my case.
In this, I mean, and he takes about as much accountability as I'd argue Justin Long in this movie's Barbarian.
That would have been the plot twist is that it's actually Justin Long playing Joe.
Oh, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
I would have embraced that.
Another horror movie for Justin Long to get murdered in.
Always.
Anyway, those are your nominations. You got Joe or Ryan. You can vote on Instagram. You can go follow us over there at the Cherry Picker Pod. You can vote for us on YouTube over in the community section. If you're new to the Cherry Picker and you are watching us on here, you can also listen to us. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. And if you're listening to us, head over to YouTube, the Cherry Picker, and subscribe and watch our faces there. And also, if you want extra vote, head over to Patreon. And if you want to subscribe and support, you'll get early access to all of these episodes early. As I said before, Cherry Picker After Dark this month is Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. So we appreciate all of the extra support. Get this camera thing dealt with.
Yeah.
Edward.
I hear you loud and clear.
Where can they find you?
You can find me at Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling, at Instagram, YouTube, Letterboxd, and TikTok. What about you, Zack Cherry?
You can find me, Zack Cherry, ZackCherry, main YouTube channel over here. I've also got Letterboxd, Twitter, ZackCherry8, and Instagram at RetroBitchFace. So check us out over there. What is going on next week?
Not The Silence of the Lambs, but later.
Hannah? Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, stop.
Sorry. It's my Chewbacca. Hannibal.
Hannibal.
Julianne Moore and
an uncredited Gary Oldman.
Go on, Gary Oldman.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna have fun with that. we've been saving up for that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, for listening, and we will be right back.